Yeah, I'm going to try and get this in. Well, I'm thinking about it, and I was thinking about where I'm at, and I'm strictly going on a lot about my memory involving, alphanumeric linguistics and um, practical application and integration of principle and all that stuff. But anyway, yeah. So I'm to the point now to where I'm just doing considerable amount of thinking about the former President Richard Nixon's terms in office in that way, and ratifying and codifying and what Abraham Lincoln is in night vision that way to Richard Nixon. It's kind of like somewhere in my mind is the question is ratifying and codifying manufactured and designed as proper numerical composition. It's like really something I really focus a considerable amount on about why one pronoun of the four types of pronouns can be used as a subject. Um, and what that is to ratifying and codifying. Normally, the word annotation, as far as history goes, of ratifying and codifying, normally associated with the United States Constitution and the capital. I mean, it gives the impression that ratifying and codifying hadn't got to a level of terminology to even identify the word annotation. Um, yeah, so I mean, as far as annotation goes, as compared to what ratifying and codifying is, or distinguishable difference between what enforcing, say, jurisprudence beyond province, or what that is in color code in the way of what seems to be a real big focus of my mind right now, involving, the HTTP colon double forward slash and what that is to, the alphanumerics of 64 and an American in Zion in the way of the 1,000 years of peace and what that means in a form of like money identified as U.S. $1,000 Grover Cleveland, and what that is to the Star of David and the 6 point star of absolute Christianity in my mind, the code blue thing of the Israeli flag, and ultimately getting to the Israeli being 73 in Harris and the Houston, Texas area and Electronic Power and We International in that way, and considerable amount. And the thing with this is that it's kind of like thinking about the Abraham Lincoln being one of the only presidents that I know of. As far as I know, as far as my memory, I'm like strictly going on my memory right now. That Abraham Lincoln being the president that is known for being studying in the dark, okay, and what that is, the night vision in my mind, like right now, the year 2023. But anyway, yeah, I thought I'd make that like real clear about that. Yeah, so the thing about it is that in combination with like former President Richard Nixon, and his thing about the word eavesdropping during like Watergate, and that's my thing. Really, okay, like my name is Wade, okay, and what that is to the Delta Force are like the biggest mouth of the river. Although schematically in electronics, that the delta is identified as a triangle, um, which is just like one side of a normally a four-sided pyramid. And if that's really the only difference of the impression of what the two-dimensional participation means as a transaction, as compared to isometrics applied of what degree level opportunity only means to the signature, the endorsement, or a transaction at the bank, or the value going beyond. Um, what might only give the appearance of participation, whether that's the issue or not, and something like in my mind of like a normal thing about blueprints and isometrics that way, reflecting three-dimensional of actual participation, and what that is to a signature or an endorsement, or what that is to really virtually anything about the 180-degree flat plane surface involving written terminology and all the alphanumerics 109 of the word written itself, and governor, and all that great stuff you've probably seen in Christian religion in a way of like for it is written thing. And really what that is to the executive classroom, um, or what that is going through a circuit, or beyond the executive classroom into something in my mind of expenditures and a considerable amount. But the thing with this is that what I've been thinking about is that with like Richard Nixon, using that word, eavesdropping. To me, as far as eavesdropping goes, I mean, if it's ultimately getting to, once again, a lot of stuff that I'm repeatedly finding, repeatedly using, say, like a degree level of opportunity, um, and what that is to the equator or an operator, or the real academics, and what academics at a degree level is and is not, whether participating in a circuit or not. Is the distinctive difference of what integration means beyond within the description of the degree itself, or degreed, non-degreed, or international law of having fair use of access easements normally identified involving in entertainment law, like a compact disc or a DVD, involving royalties that way, and what motivation or what duration, and what are the real factors involving like royalties of intellectual property in that way. I mean, I don't know if I would always use the word property in a way, as far as like, for the mere sake of intent of like what human capital and human civil rights only seem to mean, beyond liquidable equity of like a. Ultimately, I've been mentioning a considerable amount of the ERISA statute, and I've said it, and I kind of focused on the early retirement. I mean, I've seen it both ways. I mean, it's ridiculously true. I mean, it is an acronym, and obviously that's the real big deal about an acronym. What it's led to believe one way. I mean, really seriously, seems to me whether or not if a degree level opportunity only means what available information has been distributed in the form of the availability, and what information and where its designation from A to B, and what only seems to be, to some, might be the ultimate, might be naive to the fact of maybe it's real limitation in that way, or segregation in that way. But anyway, yeah. So like I was like thinking about the Richard Nixon term of like eavesdropping, and I have a real problem with that. Not necessarily that it would be, something of like the Garden of Eden, or Adam and Eve in that way, or what eavesdropping would only suggest is maybe something that would be not necessarily something approved, but something that took place. That I mean, if it ultimately gets to what litigation is and why litigation is not de facto in the Garden of Eden, I mean, for real. Um, yeah, or in my mind, it seems to be the thing about why Bitcoin is not the cryptocurrency, and why U.S. patent is not a copyright, and the list goes on and on, and really kind of like what I'm focusing on is ratifying and codifying, and what the deal is between Abraham Lincoln being the only president studying in the dark is to night vision, and what that is to the 13 colonies of American history in the way of what gives the impression of what Commonwealth is in international financial management. Seems to be like a kind of like a backdated point of origin of Commonwealth, in the way that I mean, it goes further than that. Finding it's like real hard. Commonwealth, I mean, associated with like what Commonwealth might only mean to like commons, or the ground issue of like the royal flush, okay, and ultimately what Commonwealth means of just having like food, okay. um, yeah, and it seems to be very much about what Commonwealth is, and finding some of that information. I mean, it leads to ultimately the outhouse, and I've seen it that way. That it's not really defined, chronological. I mean, straightforward, but analytically, I mean, all that information is like all together in that way. They're in that specific. I mean, if it's called what duration only means, of whether intellectual is only available information to be used, and only what value and meaning of using it, it's like that. Okay. Anyway, so like it's like tracing international financial management that way, what Commonwealth is. I mean, ultimately it gets to like beyond previously, before, like even plantations, predominantly like having a right to assemble in the way of what the management means. Beyond individualism, or I mean, as a whole, in that way. But anyway, yeah. So like the thing about I was focusing on was like Abraham Lincoln, and the night vision about that ultimately gets to the 13 colonies, and why I'm focusing on that, and the 13 stars above the eagle, and ultimately getting to like a Geneva, Switzerland issue, of like the summit meetings involving human civil rights, and the simple difference between the summit meetings and and I've seen it as the being venue. How true it is, I mean, that might be like some of the newer information, and if it's going to stand to reason as an iconic landmark, not necessarily a variant. And it seemed to be like whether if the on behalf deal is like an exponential quotient of like variables being used as powers of multiplication as compared to maybe what a variable might mean in algebra, normally addition, that way of exponential power as compared from algebra to like calculus or something that would go a little bit beyond, and only when the rules apply of nomial, binomial, and trinomial apply to like exponential variables of multiplication. It seems to be like the real big deal about the rules. But anyway, yeah. So like and ultimately, the Wyatt Earp thing and the exclusionary rule provision in that way of like sovereign immunities, governmental amnesties, and executive powers. But anyway, yeah. So I mean, kind of like been focused on that. But my thing about the Richard Nixon in terms in office using that word eavesdropping, I mean, automatically in my mind it seemed to be like a deal of like a religious thing, or what that is. Beyond the Garden of Eden, I mean, for real. I mean, if ultimately litigation starts right there for even some issue in presidential terms in office, reflecting what eavesdropping might have only meant in the Garden of Eden. I mean, seriously, got to be kidding me. And what eavesdropping would only be in the form of a edible commonwealth. I mean, for real. Um, yeah. So anyway, I'm getting off a little bit where I'm going here, but yeah. So there's like something about the connectivity between Abraham Lincoln studying dark with the night vision, and what that is to ratifying and codifying. I mean, if it gets to the proper English grammatical composition of why one pronoun cannot be used as a subject. I mean, if it's only really getting to that, it's not so prehistoric that it rules out adolescence, or beyond hieroglyphics, of like the pyramid and the U.S. dollar, or maybe the impression that not being there is not having access to the available information, and kind of blind and naive, and would have only had to be dependent upon um, a different means of attaining what availability meant. But anyway, so all that eavesdropping as far as like a presidential term in office, I mean, as far as like national security and surveillance and recognizance, I mean, it's like, this should be like really expected. But I mean, is it only suggesting that night vision or shadow government, reflecting maybe even a color code of space exploration, or what that is to an alien being 41, or like USA. I mean, if it's ultimately getting to maybe the issue of whether if the acronym of USA is only the alphanumerics of what home is to the alphanumerics of 41, or an alien in the way of like being 41, or really what the real deal is about what eavesdropping is, if it's only a degree level of opportunity, or what night vision is, or shadow government in a way of like color coded like space exploration, or even not limited to Texas, but state of Texas statutes annotated, um, the Black Book, and what that is when volume is visible on the back side, on the back of the books. Yeah, like I said, mentioned again, I've seen it both ways with the word volume on it, and on the entire, you know, um, set, and like Burn State, Texas statutes annotated on a considerable, it's like a large, um, grouping of color code of the books of statutes annotated. Okay, but anyway, yeah. So I mean, if it's ultimately getting to a color code of um, uh, of, uh, terms in office with Richard Nixon using the word eavesdropping involving Watergate. I mean, if it's only like ultimately in my mind, it seems to be like the memorial deal of like here recently, my birth certificate, my actual birthplace was identified on all my other previous like birth certificates as Memorial Southeast Hospital or Southeast. I've seen it both ways, and whatever the deal is really whatever right now. But I mean, really, I mean, it got to a point to certain factors was happening to where I really decided I just wasn't going to drive. Okay, it's got like some like issues that really I had never had to like really had to cope with were happening. So I just decided to stay like immediately local with like electric scooters and other scooters as well as far as my bicycle and like ATVs and like yeah, anything that didn't require like registration and a license. Okay, but anyway, So like I've been doing that, okay. But anyway, like I'm having to get my birth certificate and all that, and when I received it again, and I noticed it before, that it shows like a Memorial Baptist now, coming from the Bureau of Vital Statistics, and I went and got another one here like a couple of weeks ago, and it's still the same, and it ultimately it seems to be like something of like what being baptized is to the book cover on the Psychic Warrior, America's Foremost Psychic Spy, and to cover up the CIA's top secret Stargate program. I mean, on the cover there's like a guy underwater, okay, but it's kind of like it's almost like the Roe v. Wade thing. I mean, it's like I've seen Roe v. Wade spelled both ways with ROE and ROWE. Okay, and the thing of it is that the ROE is like 38, and I can go on about the change and I don't even want to say about the death thing, or what that is to even biblical reference and yeah. So in any case, it's kind of like something in a way of like seeing it on the news, and it's on the news anyway. But I have seen the Roe v. Wade spelled ROWE and being 61 like news. Well, in any case, no matter how a person has seen it and seen it or read it while watching television, I mean, it's on the news anyway, being all 61 about it. I mean, like anyway, whether legal media and deposition ever define the meaning of like maybe how naive or the significance maybe, my name is Wade is what the deal is, okay? And like I'm really focusing on my birth year of 1964. But anyway, the thing of it is, it seems that seems to be ultimately getting to what a baptism is in religion, of like being born with water and not many days hence. I mean, I've seen it both ways. Once again, of being baptized with the water, then not many days hence being born of the Holy Spirit or the Holy Ghost, and that seems to be the whole deal about other issues I'll talk about later. Anyway, but ultimately it seems to be like the airborne of like a telepathic mediation, like the airborne thing of like the Air Force and what that is to mental telepathy as compared to the alphanumeric 177 or telepathic power or the thing about the subliminal message and all that persuasive way of suggesting a thought and how persuasion is a factor of whether conscious or subconscious or of sound mind or the same thing, really if that's just only a fixed parameter of like years of it and anticipation of what's already been the issue, like hey, like everyone in the entire universe knows what's so anyway, so like okay, so anyway, so like it seems to be like it's going to be like the issue between mental telepathy or a subliminal message or a telepathic power that way, or ultimately getting to the minus 26 thing, the Secret Service, Jesus Christ, and Holy Spirit, and the list goes on and on. But the thing of it is that really ultimately seems to be that ultimately what the night vision is to shadow government, and what that is to Abraham Lincoln, in my mind, it seems to be getting to just simple terms in office, what Abraham Lincoln is to Richard Nixon. And Richard Nixon's thing about the V-twin and talking about all that peace. And during that time, it was like a Vietnam thing, and most people's mind did not automatically associate Christianity or religion in the way of Zion or what Zion is to the 1,000 years of peace. Or, Grover Cleveland being, the president on the U.S. $1,000 in that way, or what that is to, HTTP : the HTTP : being 64. Like Zion, or Zero being the operator, and operator being 108 in Chevrolet and Bicentennial. And what a Bicentennial quarter is, I mean, to the alphanumerics of 108 in Chevrolet, as well as the thing about the word operator, itself. And the thing of it is that ultimately it gets to a considerable amount of like American history. And ultimately, the 200-year celebration. But anyway, I'm kind of like focusing on ratifying and codifying. And really what that is, I mean, if it's really the issue of like what Watergate suggests as eavesdropping, or what it really means to even watch K television, or even listen to K radio. I mean, it ultimately gets to like, you got to be kidding me, because it seems to be the KU band seems to be the focus of VSAT communications. The KU band is like identified as a military function involving VSAT communications. and I kind of focus on that, and automatically when I see the K, I mean, it's automatically like television and radio in the Houston, Texas area. And how true it is everywhere, I'm not real sure. But, my focus also likewise, it goes to like the Fox News, the W television of like Fox 29 News in Philadelphia, and what that is to the 4th of July, and Benjamin Franklin flying the kite during a storm with the key on it, and the International Electrical Electronic Engineering, and what Benjamin Franklin is to the Houston, Texas area. Or, I mean, really, ultimately, I mean, the thing of it is that if if my memory serves me correctly, I believe that Benjamin Franklin was flying the kite, I think, at night, likewise when lightning struck it. I mean, according to my memory, I think that's what it was. I'll actually, if I feel like looking for it, I will, but I think that's what it was. Is that he had done that several times, and I think that it was like a dark that when lightning struck the key. Uh, yeah, so I mean, that was like something about that. Anyway, so that was my thing about the Fox 29 news. And in Philadelphia, and the Independence Day, and what Independence Day means to like the Constitution, and ratifying and codifying, because it seems to be like, really, I mean, if it's ultimately getting to the celebration of a baptism beyond liquid equity of the Navy, representative of the water, and then you've heard all the Air Force terminology of like airborne, and really it seems to me like the ultimate thing of like a spiritual telepathic communication of a mediation of like in the sky. I mean, really, it's like a telepathic mediation of communication, and I see and hear all that. Okay, in addition to like some other factors, but the thing of it is that, I mean, ultimately, if it's getting to what the Navy is to a baptism as compared to what the baptism is on more of a spiritual mental beyond the liquid equity, or or what that really is to Mount Olives and re-entering heaven, or the rapture, and all that 99 stuff about the 13 being 99 and telepathic, and the TP being 36 like Chase, and all the alphanumerics of 64 and 36 ultimately equating to 181 in Houston, Texas, Electronic Power and We International of like Warner, Electra, and Atlantic, of motion picture as well as audio production in that way. And what the summit means, it seems to be a real significant deal of like ultimately even getting to what Geneva, Switzerland is to human civil rights, and what the deal is about the significance of when and where. It seems to be like the big deal about going through a circuit beyond business and corporate law that way, of when like human civil rights really seems to be the big deal. It seems to be like almost the only way of communication sometimes, more so than not, of written that way, and what that really is to an executive classroom, or beyond the executive classroom into the expenditures of like real military time, going through a circuit, or degree level of what only. I mean, if it has to be the Washington D.C. of 130, and the DC being 137 of a television or electronic god, or the DC being a direct circuit or dimensional clause in that way, of what degree level of, I mean, if opportunity just has to be the word, I mean, well, then maybe so, but the thing is, if dimensional clause only represents maybe the experience of going to a circuit, or what that is to the book, Six of the Temple, how the Federal Reserve runs the country, identifying some history of the U.S. dollar that goes below the equator, which really seems to be the big deal in my mind of the HTTP :// because I mean, the word relation between the computer architecture and the computer platform, and what Python is to that, as well as I'm going to really have to actually focus on that lizard. I mean, it's like 71, and the lizard about the desert, and desert being 71, and like Pearland, right? Well, anyway, it's kind of like I need to really look at a little bit more about that lizard, than maybe so the Python, because I was really like looking at the Python, and I'm like strictly going on my memory, okay? And what the equator is to like embedding encryption, or it seems to be whether or not if really a reputable center of consensual participation only reflects maybe only what availability means, as far as the word, and the word is relation between computer architecture and um, um, computer architecture and computer platform. and the pronunciation and spelling of R-A and R-E-L-A-T-I-O-N being 90 and 94. And 94 seems to be like a big deal about Roe v. Wade and what annotated is to, the books of annotation involving color code of, like the red of like the New Testament of the United States Code's annotated. And like the black of the Burning State of Texas statutes annotated. I mean, the annotated is the thing about the 56 is 10. And what a paper made. I mean, through years of studying alphanumerics and linguistics, and I mean, it became such a major, repeated, like it just kept popping up, having a need. After I started like studying alphanumerics and linguistics with two sets of numbers, specifically because the alphabet, when it's reversed to 2, M is N and N is M, 13 is 14, 14 is 13. I started like actually using two numbers and predominantly focusing in the beginning with just the M is N, the 13 is 14, 14 is 13, and vice versa, and then branching off into some like analytical reasoning about why numbers are actually chosen that way, and a lot of it. So anyway, like 56 to 10 became like almost like the demanded thing involving like what I was looking at. Because yes, because of my experience, because really I didn't know anything about alphanumerics. I mean, really, at all. I mean, it's hard to believe, like, living here in Pearland. And Pearland, Texas being 140, alphanumerics are like, you got to begin. You didn't know? Well, no, I really didn't. Until really 1992, okay? And really, it was like really based upon a baptism and like a spiritual experience. And I'll probably find time to feel if I really have a need to explain anything other than that right now. But anyway, yeah. So I mean, it got to the point of like looking for answers in a way, because I mean, it seemed to be like something I was like I just didn't know how to explain it, and it's like just motivated beyond any norm of like looking for answers that way. And actually stumbled across like alphanumerics, and I didn't even realize, I didn't even know it was called alphanumerics when I really first started studying it. And it dated all the way back to like when I was in an English class in intermediate school with the cat and the act and the 24 thing. I mean, it's like maybe 20 minutes, maybe 2 or 3 days. It never really went beyond the cat and the act and tact thing about it and the 24 thing about it. But anyway, I mean, I didn't even know it was called alphanumerics like back then. But anyway, in 1992, it's kind of like I really kind of like focused on it, and after like probably close to 6 or 7 months, I was thoroughly convinced that what I was like looking at was like really and studying in the beginning phases was like alphanumeric, because yeah, but after finding that U-151 and all that Secret Service and Holy Spirit and Jesus Christ and mental telepathy minus God, subliminal message minus 26 and telepathic power. I mean, I'm sure that most people, when they find that, it's kind of like, hey, wow, that's not like really. I mean, being impressed. I got to a point really it seemed to be like being impressed with alphanumerics and not even like really getting into linguistic. I mean, at all for like 5, 6, maybe even 7 years. The word linguistic, I mean, just wasn't my thing at the time for that long. It was just like specifically just alphanumerics, no analytical reasoning or proper English grammar composition or anything, really other than just alphanumeric. But anyway, yeah, so like it's going on 28, close to 29 minutes now already, but yeah, so like anyway, like I'm already off track here, but like with like Richard Nixon using that the thing I've mentioned several times, like the quote unquote. I seem to be like when during that times like Vietnam and peace was like the thing all the time he was doing the peace thing, as well as like he was innocent. Normally when he said that he was innocent, the former president Richard Nixon, when he did it, he was normally saying he's innocent and all that. Excuse me. So and during that time the peace thing. Never once, I don't think I heard the word Zion or 1,000 years of peace, or what that means in Christianity or absolute Christianity, or even, the U.S. $1,000 Grover Cleveland. But it seems to be like separation between church and state at a minimum requirement. I mean, would be that and not limited, considerable amount more of information involving, I mean, as a demanded requirement of the United States Codes annotated and a separation between church and state. I mean, and including, the 12 Federal Reserve Banks and United States Codes annotated as a minimum requirement. I mean, you got to be kidding me. I mean, not knowing that was ridiculous. I mean, throughout my entire life, I mean, the significance of, getting over the naivety of not being involved is predominantly a considerable amount of what a person seems to be significant, or what information was significant then had lost its significance through whether only a need was based upon a lack of experience, or even many people who get a degree sometimes don't even know what to do, where to go, or what's required to actually accomplish even having the right to assemble in the way of contact and communication on a consistent basis that would prove that forming in the way of direction based upon preference and level of accomplishment as far as academics and degree, or even non-degree really. But the thing is that really at an academic level, once again, it seems to be the big deal of whether a degree participating in a circuit or not. It seems to be like the real big deal of the difference of, not limited to, the acronym or what that is. So anyway, I was trying to stay focused on it, and I'm like really starting to branch off. It's already like, guys, already like 2 a.m. in the morning right now. And I just kind of wanted to get this much in because I'm actually trying to stay concentrated on, the Abraham Lincoln studying the dark and the night vision, and what that is to, excuse me, the Lincoln Continental, and Lincoln, and what that is to the hood ornament and the 90-degree right angle of the rectangle, and the field scope and range of law that way. Or the thing about the Lincoln rearranged with letters based upon pronunciation, and the kennel, and what the colonel and the kennel is to the county and the country, and what the kernel is between the operator, or the equator, in the way of like a computer platform and computer architecture and that word relation, that way with what a kernel is, or what the kennel really is. And the person has heard it before, the next of kin, or that's predominantly not associated with like just a person being born in a memorial hospital, or the Bureau of Vital Statistics claiming some type of designation in space exploration, or if that's chosen to be maybe in the mayor's office, what a proclamation and declaration only is to maybe distinguish the difference between like television and radio, of proclamations and declarations, in that way in the mayor's office. What that is ratifying and codifying, or like ultimately needs to be the accusation that is most definitely beyond the hieroglyphics of the U.S. dollar and the pyramid, or some detached fixture in real estate, live via satellites of VSAT communications, getting beyond the hieroglyphics into the biometrics of like symbolic representation that way, and what light vision is, light scribe is in that way. So yeah, anyway, that's starting to happen again. Anyway, so I'm going to get a real quick drink here, right? Okay. So it's kind of like the deal about the Abraham Lincoln, and the Lincoln and the Colonel, and what shadow government is to night vision, and what the deal is between, the Lincoln and the Colonel computer platform. And I'm really going on my memory just to see, because like there'd been a time I've like really studied a lot of information because of the alphanumeric. I mean, there's like about a year and a half I was like phenomenally just like really impressed with it. But it's really like anything that anyone does, including sports, musicians, and the practice makes perfect thing. It's like it really goes beyond the hype. And I'm sure that everyone, when they like really start achieving and excelling, beyond the norm of like many, that being impressed with like the entire situation being involved. I mean, practice make perfect really goes beyond the hype, and all that hype about actually participating, no matter what it is, whether it's academic, sports, or whatever it is. Okay, I mean, getting over the hype about being impressed, whether it's a person being impressed with themselves, or the association, or everything about it. I mean, it gets into the discipline more so than the hype, or what generates maybe the thought of popularity, or or the thought of like, hey, is it ever going to happen? Yeah, strength in numbers originate from singularity, right? But anyway, yeah. So like in any case, yeah. So like I'm like trying to stay focused on what shadow government and night vision is to Abraham Lincoln. In that way, the operator, the zero, and HTTP colon double forward slash, and what that is to Austin Powers, or the embassy Powers, Austin Powers, Bluebonnet, Imperial Eagle, and somewhere in my mind, one of the oldest governmental mainframes identified as like the Whopper, the Whopper. Yeah, so I mean, it seems to be like a big deal going on. How true it is, I mean, if it's still being in use now, but that was like some of the information I mean immediately noticed when I was like studying mainframes and about the IBM 5520 mainframe and computer installation and configuration and considerable amount of just being involved with different types of networking involving stuff like that. Anyway, for a brief time, but anyway, yeah. So I mean, it's just like an automatic thought when I see and hear something about that. But anyway, yeah. So I mean, like in any case, so the kernel in a way it seemed to be the simplest difference of the county and the country and the R thing, and the kennel and what the next of kin really suggests in a way of human civil rights, or what not going through the circuit is, or what programming means because of, and what information is being made available based upon whatever the case may be, demographics, or I mean God, the list goes on and on. But anyway, yeah, I'm fixing to have to take a break. It's already going on like close to 37 minutes. I'm really kind of like losing my focus in direction and content. But anyway, so I'm gonna like I might do another one later on, not right now, but I'm gonna try and stay focused on the Abraham Lincoln and the night vision thing about the colonel and the kennel and what that is to the Corvette. And I mean, the list goes on and on about certain factors in that way. Or if it's going to be the amphibious thing, if it's like an amphibious map, and so many names that are on the map, whether it's a family name or an organization or a commercial venue, or the structure beyond what would be maybe like a structure of a family law as compared to presidential, executive, and legislative, or what venue means beyond the amphibious map thing of like if it's going to ultimately get to whether or not if it's going to be a province, or what event is, or if it's really getting in to the airborne thing about aviation beyond and it seems to be like really the big deal about a baptism and religion of an experience that ultimately leads to in my mind the alphanumerics and getting into the airborne of like a telepathic thing of the alphanumeric explanation, beyond like the water, like navigating maritime law, and religious, venue, if you want to call it that, or if it's even accepted as venue, based upon, maybe what experience is or is not. So anyway, yeah, so going and then getting the airborne thing about, and now you everyone's met the requirements of like being potentially eligible to be a Star is Born, yeah. Yeah, all right, yeah. From the maritime law to the aeronautics and to the space exploration, like, from the liquid equity to the thing about the atmosphere, into the space exploration, yeah, between all that, yeah. So anyway, yeah, so it seemed to be like, hey, from the baptism of water to the baptism of like airborne, and then to the Star is Born thing of like space exploration, yeah. So yeah, so that's kind of like where I'm at with all that right now. And anyway, yeah, so like I'm looking at it for real for my own thing about it, yeah. But anyway, yeah, I tell you what, I think I'm gonna go ahead and take a break. It's already going on close to 40 minutes, and I'll try and stay focused on the Richard Nixon and the V-twin, the thermocouple semiconductor, and peripheral tolerance of panoramic academia of 180 degree thing about it, and as compared to what in anatomy only seems to be the ambidextrous thing beyond the thermal couple semiconductor, and getting into the orchestrated waveform of like conductors instead of semiconductors, and having a full range of, and ambidextrous type of thing about the full 180 a panoramic academia, as well as the V-twin figure eight drumstick twirl of, like, drummers and all that good stuff. So anyway, I'm gonna take a break and look at this real quick. It's it's already like it's 2:10 a.m. right now. It's like I'm gonna take a break. Okay.